At that point, you really kind of will be able to assess just how much of an issue lower rates and a weaker economy are for the banks here.
It sort of bears repeating every single day now that the big five tech companies account for more than 22% of the S&P 500. So no matter what you see in terms of direction, it's really, absolutely on those companies for that, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, if you really kind of want to ramp things up, you look at the NASDAQ 100 index. Those five companies, 46% of that measure, more than twice as much weight in that particular indicator, which, by the way, in the last few days has surpassed its 2000 record relative to the S&P 500. So the ratio between those two indexes at a record, we're really reflecting the performance of Apple and Microsoft and Amazon and Alphabet, the owner of Google, and also Facebook. Those are your top five, and they are certainly dominating the market landscape, no matter how you choose to measure it at this point, basically.
Are we waiting for China to do something else again? I mean, if China came out and sort of gave another little goose to its equity market, would we suddenly see a different story in the United States, Dave?
China, it seems to me, over the years has kind of been its own animal to some extent. And you wonder now, with the government trying to push prices higher, working with state-run media, that sort of thing, whether there's much of a carryover beyond the mainland. And, especially when you consider the issues when it comes to Hong Kong and, how the tech companies are starting to pull back from sort of helping the authorities there. It's clear to some extent that China is kind of a market unto itself. I mean, it's one that gets watched pretty closely in the context of emerging markets because it has the kind of dominance there that those five tech companies we were just talking about do within the U.S. At the same time, does it really kind of carry over to developed markets? That becomes a bigger issue.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Looking at the markets here, as Dave was suggesting here, a little bit of a pullback, but boy, we had a strong tape yesterday, Vonnie. It was just, throughout the day, you saw buyer demand out there. It wasn't just kind of at the opening and then we kind of hang there. There was good volume throughout the day, good buying throughout the day. And today, just kind of pulling back a little bit.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I was reading as well Jim Vogel on, bonds and treasuries, and he also talks about households sustaining any rally that the Fed may launch. So perhaps it is a question of households getting involved.
Yeah, exactly right. And we've certainly seen in certain names, and some folks were suggesting where Tesla in particular, seeing a lot of retail buying getting back into that name. Right now, let's head down to Washington, D.C. Let's get world and national headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Paul, later this morning, Vice President Mike Pence will lead a video conference with governors on the response to the coronavirus pandemic. As the number of infections in this country continues to rise, the U.S. is edging close to 3 million cases. Atlanta Mayor.
New order placed to sell short euro at 112.91.
For it, not just in Georgia, but we're paying for it across the country, and people are paying for it with their lives.
Bottoms was on ABC's Good Morning America. The mayor announced yesterday she's tested positive for COVID-19 after showing no symptoms. Police in Atlanta have cleared the protest encampment at that Wendy's where a white police officer shot and killed Rayshard Brooks last month. Demonstrators had demanded police reform and a memorial to Brooks before they would leave. But for Atlanta City Council member Joyce Shepard,
as a result of what happened this weekend, all bets are off. A young girl was killed out here.
8-year-old Sequoia Turner was killed in her car as she and her mother tried to drive through the protest site. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp has authorized up to 1,000 National Guard troops to keep the peace in the area. Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg says her company needs to get better at removing hateful speech. The chief operating officer and Facebook CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, are due to meet today in Washington with the NAACP and the Anti-Defamation League. They've organized an ad boycott this month over Facebook's content policies. In a post today, Sandberg said Facebook will release its long-awaited civil rights audit tomorrow. She says it's had a profound impact on the company's culture. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
People love a good story. They like it even better when that story is real.
Is this something strange in the numbers?
Paul Sweeney.
That seems like a big miss to me.
Bonnie Quinn.
New funds getting started in order to take advantage of what might be a moment.
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
If Russia does throw this spanner in the works, what?
New short position open for Euro USD, or Euro at 112.91. So, new short position at 112.91.
Contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
The best of Bloomberg Business Week every business day.
We've got a market sell-off that's spreading around the globe.
The Bloomberg Business Week podcast with Carol Mazur and Jason Kelly.
Let's do the Bloomberg Business Week bite of the day, Carol.
The day's breaking global business, finance, and tech news, along with smart analysis.
We know the Fed is going to be sure and steady.
The Bloomberg Business Week podcast.
A great scoop on the terminal.
Listen today on BloombergRadio.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt US Kids, and the Ad Council.
COVID-19. On days when it's...
The big Volkswagen event is now on. If you're after an approved used Volkswagen, for a limited time, you can buy one with 2 years warranty, 2 years MOT cover, 2 years roadside assistance, and 2 services all included at 8.9% APR representative. Hello, sir. Do any take your fancy?
I need to sit down.
The big Volkswagen event. With every type of car on offer, you may have trouble choosing. With Solutions Personal Contract Plan until 12th of July. At participating retailers on used Volkswagens aged between 90 days and 60 months only. Indemnities may be required. Warranty valid for vehicles up to 100,000 miles at activation. MOT cover is up to 2 years and is underwritten by UK General Insurance Limited. Volkswagen Finance. Contact your local retailer.
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this afternoon. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town. So come in and see if that fridge can hold enough for your hungry household. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Tuesday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
At Halfords, we're here to get you where you want to be. Why not book an MOT to get you safely back on the road? With over 600,000 carried out every year at 350 garages, you can always count on our experts. And get back to visiting those you've missed the most.
Hi, Mum.
From a safe distance, of course. From MOTs to battery replacements and tyre fittings, there's no job too big or too small. Halfords, for life's journeys.
Eurotunnel Le Shuttle is a safer way to get to France and beyond, with social distancing built in. There's no scrum at security, hanging around for your bags, or shouldering strangers in your seat. With Eurotunnel Le Shuttle, simply drive on at Folkestone and stay in your car, comfortably. Then drive off 35 minutes later. Stay safe. Go Tunnel, Eurotunnel Le Shuttle, a safer way to France and beyond.
Short on time? Don't worry. You can still get your cook on with Asda. Get 3 Asda ready meals for just £5.50. like our beef lasagna or our tomato and mozzarella panette bake. Hang up your oven gloves, we've got dinner covered. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores and lines, subject to availability. Meals 400 grams, £2.10 each.
Give yourself a Diet Coke break.
Whether you're dreaming of a house the size of a football stadium or a football stadium in the back garden of your house, what you need is dream come true money. The Euro Millions jackpot keeps getting bigger, with a massive £127 million still up for grabs in tonight's draw. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
How do we control coronavirus now? Here's Michael, a delivery driver.
All day, every day, I'm seeing people. Last thing I want to do is give anyone coronavirus. So the first sign of a cough, soon as my temperature rises, any loss of taste or smell, I'm staying in, booking a test, only going out to get it done. I mean, you want to know straight away, right? That's how we protect each other.
To get a test, go to nhs.uk/coronavirus or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are off earlier lows, but still down as U.S. job openings unexpectedly increased in May as state economies stirred to life and businesses look to hire new people. Let's check the markets as we do every 15 minutes. Right now, the S&P is little changed. Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 0.5%, down 120. And the NASDAQ is up 0.5%, up 48. The 10-year is little changed with a yield of 0.67%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is now up 0.3% at $40.76 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 0.75% at $18.0730 an ounce. The dollar yen 107.57. The euro is $1.1290, and the British pound $1.2570. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Paul Sweeney and Vonnie Quinn on Bloomberg Radio.
You know, April 15th is etched in our minds as tax day when we write the checks and pay our money to Uncle Sam. This year, because of the pandemic, got a little bit of a break here. Tax day is now July 15th. That's good news for taxpayers. What does it mean for the U.S. Treasury in terms of cash flow? I always wondered that, but now I've got somebody I can actually ask, and I think they might have the answer. Ira Jersey, Chief U.S. Interest Rate Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. So, Ira, so the U.S. government went 3 months without my tax check, which was quite substantial, much more than I wanted to write. So what does it mean for the cash flow of the United States government?
Yeah, so, so two things.
I'm placing an order to sell for 112.83, all three positions. So all three positions, order placed to sell up, order positions closed for Euro USD. Let's see how much profit we'll get.
3 times the previous record. Normally, the Treasury Department holds $300 to $500 billion of cash to use on a regular basis, but they've, in anticipation of needing to spend more in the coming months, they've increased that quite a lot. So we'll get $100 to $200 billion more in cash, I think, next week, between this week and next week. For the market, that has an interesting aspect to it, because the way that the Treasury Department's been increasing that cash balance is by issuing a lot of Treasury bills. These are very short-term Treasury instruments where they issued this debt over and over again. Because of the tax day being moved, I think over the next week or two, you're going to start to see less T-bills being issued, and actually maybe a pay down of some of the T-bills that are in the market at this moment. And that means that there'll be a little bit less supply than there has been over recent months.
So also the White House is now looking at another stimulus package, wants Congress to pass it by the first week in August. This, according to Vice President Pence's top aide, wants to keep the cost at $1 trillion or less. Whatever about, the amount, it's a lot, right? And it will need to be raised at some point, Ira, in debt markets, right? So what happens there? Does it have an impact on yields, on the fixed income market, on, mandates?
Yeah, so the impact on yields of Treasury supply is very, very spurious. In fact, if you go back historically and you look what's tended to happen when you've had additional supply, it's basically you don't see yields rise for a few years until the economy recovers, right? So the pace of the economy matters a lot more. Now, I think what the additional supply of another stimulus could mean is that when we do finally kind of get liftoff of the economy, that you could see another taper tantrum type moment, that at some point the Fed steps away a little bit, there's a lot of treasuries outstanding, and you wind up seeing a very significant and dramatic move upward in yields, maybe 50, 100, 150 basis points in a very short period of time. And that is actually something that's kind of in our I want to say worry case scenario, because when that happens is very difficult to judge at this point. We're probably still a year away from that at least, but it does mean that you could get larger and larger moves in the Treasury market that can be pretty disruptive, quite frankly, to things like the mortgage market and to basically economic activity, because large moves like that do change the thinking of people who are thinking about borrowing in order to get new plant and equipment or buy a new house. All of these things get permeated through the market when you have large moves in Treasury yields.
So, Ira, the Fed, I think, has generally gotten very good marks from the market in terms of how they've reacted to the economic fallout from the pandemic here. As it relates to their bond buying program, what's the actual evidence telling us? How active have they actually been in this market?
Yeah, well, they've been very transparent about what they're buying when it comes to treasuries and mortgages. Quite frankly, it was very similar to what happened during QE3. It's become very rote at this point, where we know what sectors they're buying, we know when they're buying them, so the market sets up for that, and they'll buy their $4.5 billion a day worth of treasuries, which is reasonably significant. It's not given the amount of issuance, they're not buying more than the Treasury Department's issuing every month, but they are buying a substantial amount of the market risk that's out there, and that is having an impact on volatility. So you've seen where 10-year nominal Treasury yields have basically been between 60 and 80 basis points, basically for the last 3 months, and they're likely to stay there for a while, particularly while the Fed is doing all of these bond purchases, and on top of that, committing to keeping interest rates low at the front end for the next couple of years.
Briefly, Ira, I already mentioned this, but Jim Vogel this morning talking about the Fed launching a bond rally, but households sustaining it, and that we shouldn't forget that this is the power of households in the debt market. Do you agree?
So, yeah, households have been purchasers of fixed income assets, generally speaking. There was a little bit of a rotation that occurred. I think that's true, but the risk is that that's where the taper tantrum comes in, because eventually when bond yields rise, those people don't necessarily understand the amount of risk they're taking, especially when bond yields are yielding 70 basis points for the 10-year. That doesn't leave a big margin for error. If bond yields go up just a little bit, you can start losing money.
All right, Ira, always fantastic to speak with you. And even if yields aren't moving around, or if bond prices aren't moving around too much, Ira always has a lot to tell us about underneath the hood in the bond market. Yes. Ira Jersey, Chief U.S. Interest Rate Strategist, Bloomberg Intelligence. I'm telling you, Paul, it's where it all happens.
It is. That's the market, and Ira, he knows this business better than anybody, so we always love chatting with him.
Exactly. The 10-year yield right now, 67 basis points. You're listening to Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Money Minute. Investors are catching their breath after a ferocious start to the week, even as the pace of new COVID-19 cases globally raises concerns about another virus wave. The Dow dropping more than 140 points. One of the frontrunners in the race to develop a COVID-19 vaccine will receive $1.6 billion from the government to develop its experimental shot. The funds will allow Novavax to deliver 100 million doses as soon as late 2020. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg will meet today with leaders of the NAACP and other civil rights organizations to talk about how the tech giant could do more to fight injustice. Advocates have led a campaign to keep advertisers from spending on Facebook. And the Disney Plus app was downloaded more than 266,000 times last weekend in the U.S. as it premiered the movie version of Hamilton. That's 72% more than the June average for downloads, according to tracking service Apptopia. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community. Support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
How long? How much? How many? Financial, policy, and medical experts are working on answers 24/7.
What about public debt?
We are listening to those experts 24/7.
Is the Fed effectively widening this wealth gap with its programs?
Because you want answers too.
What's the most important, the trillions in stimulus, the economy's reopening, or the infections curve bending?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Are you interested in a challenging and exciting...
Hey, I'm Robin, one of the tech experts, here to help you at Curry's PC World. I'm not just a voice on the radio. You can now come into your local store and talk tech with a human being like me. Just the news you needed this afternoon. We've put all the right measures in place to help you again safely in your local Staples Corner store. The tech experts are back in town, so come in and see if that 55-inch TV is perfect for the return of sport. And welcome back to your local Curry's PC World.
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Tuesday afternoon by the scruff of the neck. Ignore this gloomy weather and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
Honda. We're not a car company. We're more of a listening company. And now our ears have brought our attention to where people feel most comfortable, the lounge. So we asked ourselves, what could Honda do to innovate in this space? Well, how about more space? Calm and uncluttered, with modern yet retro styling, and built-in screens compatible with your games console. It's the most comfortable lounge you've ever driven. Introducing the new Honda E, our small electric city car. Honda, the power of dreams.
How do we control coronavirus now? Here's Michael, a delivery driver.
All day, every day, I'm seeing people. Last thing I want to do is give anyone coronavirus. So the first sign of a cough, soon as my temperature rises, any loss of taste or smell, I'm staying in, booking a test, only going out to get it done. I mean, you want to know straight away, right? That's how we protect each other.
To get a test, go to nhs.uk/coronavirus or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Where do hockey and pop culture coexist?
So let me get this straight. You would be able to name more people nostalgically than currently? This doesn't...
Come on.
It's crazy. I know.
Other podcast Puck Soup NHL analyst Greg Wyshynski, Sean McAdoo, and Ryan Lambert chase the conversational biscuit up and down the ice, skating between serious discussion on what's happening in pro hockey to irreverent opinions on movies, fast food, and life in general. Search Puck Soup on TuneIn to listen.
Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In that. So we had to blow it up and do Super Bowl predictions instead.
Look no further than the Pick Six podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brinson's methodology for predictions.
when he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards. That's how you wind up.
Search Pick 6 on TuneIn to listen.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to take a look at the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. That was a $669 billion business loan program. We're going to take a look at where the money went. Plus, we're going to chat with Chris Ailman, Chief Investment Officer of CalSTRS, on why it's time to rebalance your 401k. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
We're going down from down to mixed, Paul, as gains in tech shares are blunting the weakness in airlines and hotels. This all coming with signs the world economy has a long way to go to get back on track. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is now down less than 0.1%, down 2. The Dow's down 0.6%, down 150, and the Nasdaq's up 0.5%, up 47. The 10-year is little changed with a yield of 0.67%. West Texas Intermediate crude's in the green, up 0.3% at 40.77 a barrel. COMEX gold's up 0.8% at 18.0810 per ounce. The dollar yen 107.58. The euro's $1.12.82, and the British pound $1.25.78. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Paul Sweeney and Vonnie Quinn on Bloomberg Radio.
So we got the PPP data yesterday, and loan recipients included a law firm run by one of President Trump's key defenders in the Russia probe. That's Mark Kasowitz. We also had a Kushner family real estate project in there, the publisher of the National Enquirer, American media, of course, and lots more interesting data to mine. 88,000 loans went to religious organizations. Let's bring in two people who've mined the database now and know a lot about what they're talking about. Tim O'Brien is Bloomberg opinion columnist, and Mark Niquette joins us as well. Tim, let's begin with you, because there were a lot of headlines about how Trump-affiliated companies, or those affiliated with at least, Trump's trademarks, got loans. Was there anything necessarily shady or unusual about this?
Well, I think the broader thing to think about to begin with is was this program properly conceived from the beginning? and has there been enough oversight to make sure that the most needy businesses got the money they needed to stay afloat? And we don't have enough evidence yet to know whether that broader goal has been reached. And the problem with all of these stories about insiders getting first in line to get the loans raises, one set of problems around this, which is there weren't clear guidelines about who was the most deserving, and whether those are businesses affiliated with Democrats or Republicans. I think there's a real problem with anybody from any party getting to the front of the line first because they have connections in Washington or connections to the SBA or connections to the White House. And certainly there was concerns about this with Trump from the very beginning. Chuck Schumer, early on, when the CARES Act was being drafted, said there would be language in there to make sure that Trump-related entities didn't get any funding. And then it ended up being that the PPP funding, which is one of the biggest arms of the bailout, was exempt from some of that. And you have to wonder why that occurred.
So, Mark, you wrote just a fantastic article kind of detailing what happened here, what's going on, where the money's going. What are some of the key takeaways you had? Like, who were some of the big recipients that maybe surprised you that received money?
Well, it was quite a range of companies that did access the funding, including, as you mentioned, a lot of nonprofits and religious organizations. We saw, as you said, about 88,000 loans for religious organizations, including the Archdiocese of New York, and nonprofits ranging from universities to museums to zoos that tap this funding. And what was striking about is just the breadth of these companies, both nonprofit and corporations that tap this loan. It sort of gave you a sense of just how deep the impact was, or how frantic these companies were to apply for this aid, particularly when this project launched.
Yeah, I mean, Tim, there was money left over, and there was a lot of problems in actually trying to apply for money. And, the idea that money being left over, is just wasteful, right? And there's another problem here as well. We don't know who accessed the largest loans. Now, we don't know who accessed the smallest ones either, but there was certainly a sort of an effort to have small businesses only apply for what they needed. So it does seem like there may have been, different levels of invitation to this particular program.
Well, there were two tranches. Remember, the first tranche, there were a lot of problems with the SBA's computer systems, banks being gatekeepers to small businesses to get the money. The first huge tranche of this, over $300 billion, went out the door in 2 weeks. I think there was a strong effort made when the second round of funding came along to make sure that most authentically small businesses that didn't have resources, meaning companies that weren't publicly traded, for example, had better channels in to get the money, and it appears that they did. And I think that the fact that there was some money left over, I think suggests that at least some of the initial bleeding was staunched. But we're still in early days in this, and I think the government's going to have to kind of wrestle with the reality that this may have just been a stopgap measure, and also with the reality that there just simply hasn't been enough oversight and data collection put in place for the public to really know whether or not these programs have met their goals.
Mark, what's the sense of the oversight here? Is there a belief here? I know we're kind of early days, but is there a consensus or a belief that the oversight was adequate or not so much?
No, I think there's growing pushback that not enough disclosure happened here. I mean, one of the things that occurred was the Trump administration initially said it wasn't going to disclose any data about the PPP loans, arguing that this was proprietary or confidential information because payroll information was used to calculate the amount of the loans, and the idea was particularly smaller firms releasing that payroll data would be proprietary or confidential. And after pushback from the public and lawmakers, SBA and Treasury agreed to release sort of some of the data. We got the names of companies and other details for all loans of more than $150,000, but for loans under $150,000, all you got was a loan amount and the some demographic information. And as it turns out, that accounts for about 86-87% of all of the loans fall into that category of less than $150,000. So we don't have details of who got these loans for the majority of the borrowers, and you're seeing push by Democrats in particular to say, well, the disclosure's fine. We see the names of companies for the larger loans, but we need to really see who took these lower loans, just because that's the only way we're going to be able to evaluate whether this program actually reached the borrowers it needed to.
Mark Niket, thanks so much for joining us. Mark is a corporate influence reporter for Bloomberg News, and, of course, Tim O'Brien, senior opinion columnist for Bloomberg Opinion, on this Paycheck Protection Program, $669 billion, and lots of questions about where that money went. Right now, let's head down to Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines with Nathan Haber. Nathan.
Paul, Florida just reported another 3.6% increase in coronavirus cases. It's the third straight day the state's been at or below the previous 7-day average. New York just added 3 more states to its quarantine list. Those are just the latest developments in a U.S. outbreak that is now close to the 3 million infection mark. Vice President Mike Pence's chief of staff, Mark Short, tells Bloomberg Radio another nationwide shutdown is off the table.
When the United States asked Americans to sacrifice for 45 days to slow the spread, people made enormous sacrifices. It gave us the time and preparation to build supplies from across the globe to make sure that our hospitals are better prepared and to develop better therapeutics.
Short also says the White House wants Congress to pass another round of stimulus capped at $1 trillion before it leaves for summer recess early next month. Congress is in recess right now, but members of House Appropriations subcommittees are on Capitol Hill to approve spending bills for the next year. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports from Washington.
Members of both parties on the Homeland Security Subcommittee agreed on most of the spending for agencies from emergency management to Coast Guard. Then Chairwoman Lucille Roybal-Allard said there would be no money for a wall on the Mexican border.
Provision is included prohibiting the use of any federal funds for border barriers construction.
Ranking Republican Chuck Fleischman.
This wall is necessary, and it is an effective asset against transnational criminal organizations, trafficking and smuggling enterprises.
The bill passed and the subcommittee's work was done. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisors.